They say a show's hero is only as good as its antagonist. With a lot of genres and mediums, particularly anime and anime-inspired cartoons, the bad guys can be just as or even more of a pull with the viewers than the good guys. This tends to come down to compelling character writing or simply a cool or attractive design, along with some sexy doses of competence. Stupid villains, however, are usually either dumb muscle or a comic relief character, since few tend to tolerate the lead villain being too much of a moron by design. But what about when it's done with a more serious villain? Muzan from Demon Slayer and Carmilla from Netflix's Castlevania series are very different monsters. But surprisingly, these two dumbasses of the night have a lot more in common than you'd think. Particularly with how these two wannabe masterminds aren't nearly as smart as they think they are. Hey team, Phantom Skull, the super security VTuber here. And since we're hitting fall and spooky season, I decided we're comparing a pair of not-so-bright mastermind monsters to analyze the many things this Demon King and Vampire Mistress have in common in their failings. So grab your monster-slaying gear of choice and get ready to deep dive into these nocturnal narcissists. So unmarked spoilers for Demon Slayer and Castlevania ahead, including manga spoilers for Muzan, so fair warning on that. Before we dive in, let's take a brief look at the backstories for these two big bads. Muzan Kibusuji was a ruler during the Heian era who constantly suffered from poor health and obsessed with avoiding death from his terminal illness. When the latest concoction from his royal doctor seemingly fails, he kills him in frustration. But soon, not only does his vitality return, but he finds himself stronger and faster than any human, with an insane healing factor, but also discovers he has a taste for blood and can burn from sunlight. The strange medicine had turned him into the very first demon. Now the self-proclaimed king of demons, he spent 1,000 years creating his demonic army to both protect him from the Demon Slayer cores who hunt him relentlessly, but also searches for the blue spider lily, a plant that could remove his weakness to the sun. Said to be the last possible way to kill him he hasn't conquered yet, which leads him to a climactic battle between the brave heroes of the Demon Slayers and a particularly empathetic main character who has a score to settle with the self-proclaimed king. Carmilla's past isn't as fleshed out as Muzan's, but according to her, she was once a normal human who was enslaved and turned into a vampire by an old and cruel vampire lord who treated her like a plaything. After years of abuse, she killed her former master and rose to become a powerful and feared night ruler, both being a co-leader of the all-female Styrian Council and one of Dracula's generals. But Carmilla had bigger plans, both seeing Dracula as a self-destructive lunatic too depressed about his murdered wife to realize his mass killing of humanity would leave them without a food source, and her own hang-ups with male rulers would set in motion her own scheme to become the Queen of the Night. To, not so spectacular results. On the surface, even with their vastly different backstories and being very different types of blood-sucking monsters of darkness, Muzan and Carmilla share a lot of similar traits and motivations. One particular being that they're not quite as smart as they think they are. Now, when I call them stupid, I should mention they're a particular kind of stupid, perhaps the most dangerous kind. They're idiots who think they're the smartest people in the room. Moronic narcissists come in many destructive forms, and plenty I'm sure you've had to deal with, like a Karen claiming to be an expert on a subject she has no clue about, or an obnoxious middle manager at the office who berates everyone below him who does all the real work, or the average transphobe or anti-vaxxer trying to debate people about their dumbass takes. Being ignorant of things and topics is a completely different ballgame than being spitefully ignorant and refusing to accept new information or opinions. Muzan and Carmilla are two of the best examples of a self-destructive narcissist in modern media. Muzan himself is worse in this regard, since his high opinion of himself reaches delusions of godhood. That's not exaggeration, he considers himself a near-perfect being. He's lived for 1,000 years as the king of the demons, and during all of it thought himself a supreme being when in reality he was just a homicidal man-child who put on airs of being better than everyone else. Whenever he's on screen, his entire persona is like an edgy teen trying to bluff being a big deal to everyone else around him. During his meeting with his elite demons, the Upper Moons, he puts on a grand entrance of doing chemistry while multitasking discussing recent events for the demon forces. We all know he's only doing this to try and show off his brilliance to his subordinates, since ultimately, he's just mixing bottles together since it's ultimately another failed attempt at concocting his anti-sun solution. Carmilla, while equally coming off like a spoiled, petulant child in how she acts, at least backs it up with some level of competency. By that I mean her trust in her sisters on the Styrian Council, because on her own, oh boy, she'd make Custer look like a military genius by comparison. Her shortcomings don't become that noticeable until season 3, but the woman has no logistics or military management skills. After her failed coup against Dracula, she ends up roughing it all the way back to her territory due to her forces losing their horses in the first week of the trip. And ultimately, her plan to take advantage of the chaos of Drax's death to expand their kingdom into an empire was a logistical nightmare. Wanting to expand their territories and turning their human population into one big blood farm was an audacious scheme, but one she didn't put that much thought into beyond that. Her sisters on the council, while admitting she was a big dreamer who could whip them all into action, were actually the ones who had to make her schemes into practical realities. That's not even inference, that's a direct quote from them about how their council works. Even if ultimately they realized Carmilla's empire would lead to a forever battle of curbing rebelling humans refusing to be cattle they'd be trapped in, they at least tried to make the plot one they could reasonably pull off. But for as much of a nasty temperament as Carmilla had for everyone that wasn't her, and especially those with Y chromosomes, she did treat the vampires on her council like family, and even tolerated them being openly flippant with her and snarking about them putting in the work to make her plans successful ones. Not even Muzan can say he has this going for him. Try being a demon and giving him even 0.1% of the snark Camilla's sisters from another Night Mother gave her. You'd be in a million bloody pieces before your remains even hit the floor of his infinity castle. Carmilla has a nasty temper, but she has nothing on Muzan in this category. He tolerates zero annoyances in his presence, and could kill you for just breathing by him in a way he didn't like. He has zero love or camaraderie with his demon prodigy. In his eyes, the second you become a demon, you're nothing but an extension of his will. And God help you if he thinks you aren't doing a good enough job. He expects two things from his demons: kill the demon slayers and find the blue spider lily. Anything else doesn't matter to him, and he expects results instead of excuses. In many ways, Muzan is even worse than Carmilla in strategy and logistics. He only cares about how strong his demons are, and if they can deliver one of the two things I just mentioned. He particularly hyper-focuses his forces on hunting down the Hashira, the elites of the Demon Slayer organization. However, the Hashira are basically one-man and woman armies that only his upper moons typically stand a chance against. Can't measure up yet like his lower moon demons? Tough shit, get devoured, weakling. Muzan, despite pushing 1K in years, is an incredibly impatient person. He expects unreasonable standards from his demons, often killing them if he feels they've taken too long to get stronger, or because they dare to talk back to him. This is best shown when he meets the remaining lower moon demons after their lower 5th ranked Rui was taken off the demon census. He very plainly says he's grown tired of the lower moons for being so weak, and constantly changing unlike his upper moons, and purges all but the lower 1 moon because he licked the right amount of Muzan's shoes to give him another shot and a movie to try and take out our main boy Tanjiro. Him purging the lower moons would be one of the many things that would bite him in the ass in the final saga of Demon Slayer. Even if they weren't taking out Hashira, they were still stronger than the average demon foot soldier. Rui, who was just the lower 5, slaughtered a lot of the Demon Slayer's cannon fodder members, who were all future potential Hashira. So when he pulls his grand plan of pulling all of the Demon Slayer members into his Infinity Castle to kill them in one fell swoop, Ultimately, he just opened himself up to taking the biggest of L's, since the Slayers predicted he'd do something so predictable and one-dimensional, and had been training their foot soldiers like crazy in preparation. Guess making fans suffer through the snooze fest that was Season 4 was all part of the plan. While they weren't helpful against the Upper Moons, the regular Demon Corps members were ready to take on the Demon's cannon fodder to ensure Muzan's plan of tiring the Hashira out before encountering his Upper Moons failed. And now there was a whole gap of mid-powerful demons, now dead, who weren't there to deal with them. Ultimately, the only demons he tolerates minor annoyances are his Upper Moons, since he can't afford to replace them as willy-nilly, but even they have limits. I should also mention he pulled his master plan after losing half of them recently, with his impulsive need to nab Nezuko forcing him to rush out new ones, who are basically chumps compared to the ones that came before. The thing with demons is, the longer they survive and feed, the stronger they become, often developing dangerous blood demon arts. These are the demon's unique, gimmicky superpowers similar to the Demon Slayer's sword-breathing styles. Muzan, knowing this, berates his demons for being weak and not getting stronger quickly like an impatient child, and treats them as replaceable as he can just make more demons. However, only he can make new demons, so they really are a finite resource he wastes more than Iron Mouse on her 800th new model for the year. Seriously, I love Mousy, but there needs to be an intervention at this point. I think the best Muzan quote that shows how much of a delusional narcissist he is when Tanjiro and company finally confront him in the Infinity Castle near the end. Now, this speech is a manga spoiler, so if you'd rather not hear my probably bad dub-over of it, skip ahead here. So when they finally confront Muzan saying they're here to put an end to this, he gives one of the most self-flating speeches about how he's the real victim here. Persistent. You're all seriously persistent, and it bores me. It sickens me from the bottom of my heart. Whenever you open your mouth, you only remember that one dumb notion about avenging your parents, kids, or siblings. You've all survived. That should be enough for you. So your family got slaughtered. What's the problem here? Think of yourself as lucky and go back to the way you lived life before. Look at it this way. Being killed by me is the same as encountering a great calamity. You don't need to think so hard about it. Rains, winds, volcano eruptions, earthquakes. Nobody tries to swear revenge on a natural disaster, no matter how many lives it takes. You can't bring dead humans back to life. Why not just stop fussing over the issue all the time and live quietly to earn your daily wages? Most humans live that life. Why can't you all do that? There's only one reason. The demon hunters are an assembly of deviants, and I'm tired of dealing with deviants. I'm the one who really wants to put an end to all of this. Like a lot of clueless narcissists, Muzan has zero accountability for his own actions and always thinks his enemies are the ones in the wrong, which makes his tactical blunders all the worse since he just butchers any demon that tries to give him any good strategies. Carmilla, while equally wasteful with her forces, at least has an actual battle strategist on her council she actually listens to in the form of Striga. Alongside Morana handling logistics and Lenore acting as the diplomat, they cover Carmilla's shortcomings, and even with her temper, reins it in to listen to them, if only them. The only person Muzan listens to is a mirror. Another thing they have in common is both being adequate manipulators. If you expected me to call them master manipulators, I'd have to bluntly say that would be a Stretch Armstrong of a stretch for both of them. Sure, they've got some decent con game, like maybe basic right-wing grifting 101, because their only real examples of manipulations aren't that much to write home about. All of Muzan's examples of people he tempted into becoming demons were either already desperate, malicious, or hit the despair event horizon, so he really didn't need to put in that much effort to convince them to drink some of his blood. We've already established the guy has the patience and temperament of a violently unstable child, so what little charm he shows during his demification offers isn't going to make that much of a difference, given how mentally broken or on death's door his marks were when offering them. And about 80% end up getting buyer's remorse when they find out they now burn in the sun and have to answer to a murderously petty narcissist who can read their mind and turn them into a baloney mist cloud for annoying him. As for Carmilla, her main example of manipulation was her tricking Dracula's forge master Hector into unintentionally betraying him and helping in her coup. However, it's hard to call this impressive since Netflix Castlevania Hector has a reputation for being, not too bright. He's a troubled man-child who's a misanthrope light to his co-worker Isaac's ultimate misanthrope, who has a very simplistic outlook on things. Out of all of the main Drac Pack characters in Season 2, he's the only one not to pick up on the fact their Lord's campaign will end in the decimation of humanity and the end of the vampire species by starvation. When Carmilla starts whispering sweet nothings into his ear and tossing compliments around, she may as well have offered him candy with how easy he was to play. And when her coup fails miserably due to the heroes striking at the same time, she takes her anger out on Hector by enslaving him and beating the shit out of him. Something her sisters call out as incredibly stupid since Hector was critical to her post-Dracula plans. In order to expand Styria's territory, they needed way more forces of darkness, and they simply did not have enough vampire soldiers to man the planned borders. They needed night creatures to fill the gaps, and Carmilla just smacked around and broke the one Forge Master they had in their possession, who has no reason to swear loyalty to them. If it wasn't for Lenore, who proves to be a much more skilled manipulator who plays Hector like a fiddle and magically enslaves him through a honeypot scheme, Carmilla's ambitions would have fallen apart much faster than they did. I swear, the more I dive into these two night-crawling nitwits, the more depressed I get. Another fatal flaw the two share is being absolute control freaks. Both Muzan and Carmilla are obsessed with controlling every aspect of their servants, their plans, and their lives to homicidal degrees. The key difference being what drives this maddening need to be the absolute order in their afterlives. Carmilla is a woman burned and twisted by trauma. She was someone who had her freedom and agency taken by a brutal vampire lord who abused and violated her for years until she killed him. And when she formed the Kingdom of Styria with her sisters, they were basically considered outcasts by the greater vampire lordships, who ignored their calls for help when repelling multiple human attacks during their kingdom's early years. The main reason being none of them respected a kingdom ruled by women. This abuse, mockery, and disrespect would form the biggest of chips on Carmilla's shoulders. Most would be content with the stable kingdom they had made for themselves. But Carmilla was an undead woman scorned, and hell had nothing on the fury burning within her. This madness would cause her already sketchy expansion plan to balloon into global domination out of pure spite. Something her sisters realized would doom them all in the long run and cause endless suffering for them all. While the three loved Carmilla and the work she did with them to make their little slice of vampire heaven, none of them would stand with her on this self-destructive path. So when Isaac and the Night Boys attack Styria to avenge Dracula, with a little help from a very done-with-everyone Hector, Miranda and Striga opt to cut their losses and go start a new life together elsewhere, over dying to avenge Carmilla. And even Lenore, who gets taken out of the fight by Hector, admits Carmilla brought her eventual fate on herself. Carmilla's spiteful madness would end up turning away the only real family she ever had, both living and undead. Muzan's motivations for his malice are, less sympathetic. Despite the King of Demons projecting this image of an ultimate godly being, almost every single choice, action, and even curation of his powers throughout his long life were guided by one crippling factor: his fear of death. Muzan at his core is an utter coward who fears his own mortality even after living for 1,000 years, and making his body basically immune to everything but the burning of sunlight. Muzan's entire human life was spent sprinting away from the Reaper due to his sickly constitution, putting many resources into healers and medicine men to try and cure his ill body. The one he'd kill in frustration would be the one to bear fruit, but sadly realized too late he'd still need him to figure out a fix for his new solar allergy problem. Despite the whole can only go out at night stipulation, Muzan was happy as he could be. He had a seemingly immortal body, his vitality and strength tripled that of a normal human. He could live as he pleased, and anyone who tried to tell him what to do was made into bloody mist. Even the early demon slayers struggled to even touch him. He had finally conquered death. That is, until he encountered a certain swordsman who humbled him right into the ground. The swordsman and his sun-breathing technique would strike wounds so painful, and even came a hair's breadth close to killing the overconfident Keen, that he'd flee in sheer terror, and would change the course of Muzan's entire unlife for centuries to come. After this, Muzan rarely if ever handled situations himself, sending legions of demons to fight his battles and hunt for the blue spider lily, because despite his arrogance, his battle with that swordsman left him psychologically terrified of the demon slayers. Not that he'd ever admit this, of course. Hell, even his own powers, which have been described as boring but practical by fans compared to the flashier blood demon arts of his lackeys, is symbolic of his cowardly nature. As the progenitor of demons, he has the ability to gain their blood demon arts when he devours them, and he spent 1,000 years curating his powers into two specific categories: extreme social distancing and backups for his backups. His combat abilities all share the same goal of keep anything with an anti-demon blade away from him as far as possible and turn them into a bloody paste. And his regeneration powers are so triple S tier, along with having multiple backup organs and brains, it's not exaggeration when they say he's immune to basic beheadings, which is the usual go-to for slaying demons. Even his upper moons, who all have developed some gimmick to stave off beheading, or at the very least make it very hard for the demon slayers, can't claim to have fully overcome the beheading meta except their boss. Sunlight is literally the only thing left that can fully kill Muzan, but that's still not enough for him. He needs to ensure all ways to bring death to his door are removed. So when our protagonist's friendly demon sister Nezuko becomes able to survive in the sunlight, he abandons all sense of logic and planning to get his hands on her. Once he devours her, he will truly be an immortal being. But his fear of his inevitable death would lead to the many mistakes that would give the demon slayers the opening to finally end him. Muzan's narcissistic stupidity only reached new heights when he finally confronts the leader of the demon slayers, the sickly, blind, and dying Kaguya Ubuyashiki. Muzan makes a grand entrance, wanting to rub it in how the head of the family that spent centuries hounding him was about to die. And he never puts the pieces together about the fact that Kaguya anticipated his arrival, was calm as a gentle river about him being there, had 2 of his kids with him, but not a single guard despite knowing he was coming. Kaguya is in many ways a narrative foil to Muzan. Despite being near helpless due to a curse-implied genetic illness due to his family birthing the demon, was a brilliant man with amazing intuition and boundless empathy that his walking nukes the Hashira respected and loved like a father. Unlike Muzan, who despised change, treated his demons as expendable, and thought only himself important, he long accepted the inevitable flow of life and death, respected all of the Demon Slayer members like his own children, and ensured its organization would live on without him. He and his family sacrificed themselves to bait Muzan into letting his guard down, only realizing too late that they booby-trapped their entire mansion with explosives and anti-demon shrapnel. While this didn't kill him because, again, near unkillable, it did hurt like a bitch, and gave the Demon Slayers the opening they needed to kickstart the many dominoes that would lead to his demise. While I won't go into exact spoilers how he goes out since anime-onlys have about 2 to 3 movies left to get there, I will say he does not go gracefully, and has an ending fitting for such a pathetic coward. Carmilla, for her stupidity and allowing her violent misandry and narcissism to cloud what little judgment she had, at least can say she didn't go out like a punk ass. While she never truly got to show off her combat prowess until her final moments, she shows very much she became a vampire noble by sheer brutal combat prowess. While she can't escape Isaac's attack on her, she makes him pay for it in brutal losses to his night creatures, and when cornered, spitefully force herself to deny them the satisfaction of killing her, not allowing a man to give her the final blow, and turns her own blood into a final last-ditch weapon, blowing up the entire room. Or she was a violently unstable vampire who let her spite and ambition destroy what she had. In the end, she went out on her own terms, which is a far cry from the pitiful end Muzan meets. I love Muzan and Carmilla in the love-to-hate sense. Both are amazing examples of making a completely repugnant villain and showing the dangers of an idiotic narcissist with even a crumb of power or authority. Making your main villain a fool isn't always a weakness to your writing. Both are talented and legitimate threats in their series, but shows how their own arrogance was their own worst enemy before any Belmont or Commodore. This king and queen of the night may not have been the brightest bulbs in the pack, but are great examples of it being a feature over a bug. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for checking out my video. If you enjoyed it, I'd appreciate a like and a comment. What are your thoughts on Muzan and Carmilla? Was there one you thought was worse than the other? Do you have dumb villains of your own you want to discuss? Let me know down below. Be sure to check me out on Patreon if you'd like to support me more directly, but likes, comments, subs, and shares also help as well. Got more spooky themed videos coming next week, so I hope to see you all next time.